Hi, everyone. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo, Emil Amok to you. Oh, we're here talking in my COVID closet, watching Anthony Fauci today try to deny that he did anything bad. Here's the key thing about the Fauci hearings today. He did something wrong. The Democrats are trying to protect him, and it pains me that I might be on the same page as Marjorie Taylor Greene for once. I don't like that. But Fauci did a bad thing by funding these, these international laboratories, including the one in Wuhan, and especially the research on gain of function, which is to like juice up all these bacteria to get them as strong as possible, so you know what you're dealing with, and then woo, they escape, and people ended up being killed. That was funded by NIH, by the United States. Fauci knew about it and has tried to cover it up. And now we have these hearings where he can't cover it up. The Washington Post did a story about it. It was a big story, didn't get much attention. And now I think because of the Trump trial, the aftermath of the Trump trial, which is still significant, and because of the Hunter Biden thing, which, I'm not really interested in. I mean, Hunter Biden isn't an elected official. Hunter Biden isn't running for office. It sounds like a personal thing that, hey, I'll see what happens afterwards. But I'm not paying as close attention to that as I was with the Trump trial. In the meantime, these hearings are taking place, and you're getting a lot of these little things that are coming out, like animal experimentation, how animal testing is wrong. It's being referred to, but the main thing that people are upset with is the Republicans are upset that Fauci may have had a role in the spread of this disease. The Democrats are saying, hey, he was responsible for, making sure that Americans didn't die in greater numbers. So you're going to get this partisan fight. And if you just got at the truth is Fauci played a role in funding, using American taxpayer dollars, gain of function experiments in China that got out of hand and may have unleashed the virus on the world. That's really what you need to know. And the hearings are expected to, it shouldn't be partisan. If anything, people should say, well, what's wrong with our system? How can we make the system work better? How can we make sure we're not funding projects in international labs that we have no control over? And that's one of the things, if you were listening to the hearings, that were surprising, how Fauci didn't know enough about what was going on with U.S. taxpayer funded research, especially when it comes to gain of function and the COVID, the virus that got out of hand. And the whole idea of gain of function is that you kind of accelerate the power of it to see what it can do, and then try to remedy from that point. But then what happens is it escaped or got out of the lab and got into the public, and that's when the trouble started. So we're still going over that, which is good in a way, because it might set us up for dealing with bird flu, the next plague. It might help us deal with our own attitudes toward the virus and vaccines. Although right now, I don't know if you've noticed, I mean, not a whole lot of people are masking up. Not a whole lot of people are vaccinating. I know before I went back east, I got vaccinated again. I think I've got about six jabs now. And thank goodness I haven't, knock on wood and all that, but I have not had COVID, don't want it, want to do all I can to prevent it. And I'm surprised that people aren't of the same mind to do all they can to prevent getting COVID, because it's real. It's for real. And it could come back again. Anyway, so the Fauci hearings were the big story today. But today I want to talk more about the post-Trump thing, because it was infuriating over the weekend to see all the Republicans just poo-poo the verdicts, poo-poo the rule of law, talk about how great Donald Trump was and how Donald Trump was being railroaded, how it was all political. Oh, no, nothing of the sort. I'll read my column from the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund in a second. And then also I saw a movie this weekend. I mean, it's been out. It was nominated for an Academy Award, but it's more widely available and streamed. I saw that, I think 96% positive on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm talking about Perfect Days, the Japanese movie. And I know a lot of people say, oh, don't tell me about it. Don't tell. If I don't tell you about it, you're not going to see it. And if I especially don't tell you about it, if I don't talk about it, you're not going to appreciate what you're seeing, because you're just going to look at it and say, oh, it's boring. Well, why am I watching this movie about a toilet cleaner? Because Emil said to watch a movie about a toilet cleaner. No, I don't want to call it a great movie, but it is the kind of movie that is an embodiment of life, and that in the end teaches you about the value of life in almost real time. I mean, it takes 2 hours. You say, God, they couldn't tell this to us in 30 minutes, Emil. Well, they probably could have with some judicious editing, but there's something about seeing this unfold in 2 hours that makes you appreciate the moment that you're in, because you're never going to have that moment again. The moment of watching the film for the first time. And you're not going to, because a lot of people watch films and they want to feel like, oh, I want to be surprised. No, you just want to be in it. But sometimes you're waiting for the surprise to happen, and then it doesn't happen. Then you're saying, oh, why did I waste my time? You wasted your time because life unfolded before your eyes, and you're in a unique cinematic moment that will never be repeated again. The first time you saw the movie. And then maybe if you were armed with understanding what this movie was about, it's in Japanese, except for the songs, like Patti Smith has a song, there's an Otis Redding song. I mean, so there's English, you'll understand it. But even without, the language aspect, you'll understand this is about life. This is about dealing with the beauty of a simple life. And I think for a lot of people, especially older boomers who are saying, hey, I'm trying to make sense of all this. Does it make sense? This is a good movie for those who are 60 plus and are thinking about retiring, or are retired and are wondering, what's it all about, Alfie, right? What's it all about? What it's all about is you lived a life, a perfect life, and don't let outside forces tell you otherwise. Don't let people who say, oh, well, you didn't live in that neighborhood, or you didn't have that big house, or you didn't have that car, you didn't have that big job. Don't let them tell you you didn't leave or live a fulfilled life. That's something I took away from. I'll read something from what some reviewers said about A Perfect Life. In the meantime, I do want to talk about my latest column on the ALDEF blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aldef.org/blog. I call it Rule of Law in the Era of CFDT34. CFDT34. I want you to remember that, because that's going to be the new phrase. You don't have to say the guy's name. You just have to say CFDT34. So I start the column saying, I respect the rule of law. I don't always like it, but I understand why we need it in a democracy. So, for example, when the homicide laws did not favor a prosecution and the murder of my cousin in California in 2014, I was outspoken and critical. My family still did not get justice. And unless there was some political will to change the law justifying shooting an unarmed man thought to be an intruder, I could do nothing but abide by our system. I mean, that's what it means to be an American. You abide by our system. This is our system of justice. So why is accepting the American truth, which I have come to accept in my case, why is it so hard for CFDT34? Now, the name CFDT34 sounds like a dangerous radioactive isotope. I know. And it is a dangerous radioactive isotope to our democracy. But CFDT34 is my coinage of a new acronym that we all should adopt. It's shorthand for Convicted Felon Donald Trump. CFDT, Convicted Felon Donald Trump, with 34 being the number of criminal counts of guilt. This case wasn't a minor indiscretion. 34 guilties represent a belief, if not a lifestyle. CFDT 34. We need to say CFDT 34 aloud as much as possible, almost as if a mantra, as a constant reminder, because too many Americans are in denial, especially CFDT 34 himself. Of course, CFDT 34 does not have the class to end his run to be president again, or to show that for once he can set aside his ego for the good of our country. In fact, because he came close to overturning the 2020 election with fake electors and insurrectionists, CFDT 34 feels he can come back even stronger to challenge any future election and live up to his dream of becoming president for life. That would be a dictator. CFDT 34, if given a second chance, will likely do all he can to defy any majority that votes against him. News reports say CFDT 34 is already assembling teams and methods to undo and deny any unfavorable election results. That would not be good for democracy. Now, what if CFDT 34, convicted felon Donald Trump, 34 guilty counts, what if he did this instead? Make the magnanimous decision to immediately put an end to his campaign for America's sake. Think of the benefits to all of us, but especially to him. If CFDT 34 demonstrated a modicum of sense for the public good, he would be automatically catapulted into the ranks of the most memorable presidents in history. Washington, Lincoln, and Trump? Well, he'd be closer to those two than to Nixon. CFDT 34 would be the only twice impeached president criminally convicted of 34 felony counts, with 3 other criminal trials to go, who for the good of the country chose not to run. That would truly be historical. The felon who saved democracy. Imagine that. The felon who saved democracy. Donald Trump should like that. That's a good moniker for him. I'm Donald J. Trump, the felon who saved democracy. That's a good one. However, instead, CFDT 34 is determined to play out his hand. He's fundraising tens of millions of dollars. Reports say in excess of 70 million. He's destroying the Republican Party by having its leaders parrot his words in unison or be abandoned like Liz Cheney. I mean, you heard them all weekend. Rigged system, never should have been tried. Where was the crime? The Federal Election Commission didn't see a crime. Just a misdemeanor. All of that is baloney. The evidence was overwhelming, and an independent jury was selected. The verdicts were fair and square, resulting in 34 guilty verdicts. To hear the Republican leaders defend CFDT 34 with outright lies is disheartening. And then to see Trump, in his first public statements on Friday, rail out against what he called the fascist system against him, downright alarming. I mean, Why stop with simple election denying, right? The man who would be fascist is employing a strategy of double talk that, where he calls his opponents the fascists while paying no respect to the rule of law. Worse yet, the right-wing commentators adopting the CFDT34 talking points. Now, one popular podcast with millions of listeners is saying it was a federal case and Biden was in on it. No, it was a state case, a New York state case, and Biden and his Justice Department had nothing to do with it. I mean, this was a simple business document falsification case that was elevated because CFDT 34 wanted to keep the electorate from knowing about his affair with a porn star. Now, here's one thing about that aforementioned podcast. The aforementioned podcast says, hey, look, we know Trump is guilty. We know Trump did it. And that's why most of us don't care. Or it's not a majority. Some of the latest polls show that a majority do care that Donald Trump was convicted, but too many don't care. And why is that? It's because many of us are just like him. We'll cut a corner. We'll make sure things are going for us and not for others. Would you pick up a $100 bill off the floor and give it to the lost and found, or would you pocket it? It's that kind of thing. I mean, I'm not saying that we all have larceny in our souls, but there's some of us who would choose not to be as ethical as possible in certain situations. And in that sense, many of us are no better than Donald Trump. And because of that, a lot of people out there are saying, hey, forgive the guy. Easier said than done. Hey, look, you see all these Republicans out there defending him, saying all these lies. We could do as the former Republican Never Trumper and half Asian American, Filipino, George Conway has done since the verdicts, and just call out all the Republicans who appear on talk shows as shameless liars. That, however, is much too direct for career politicos. And when I saw the instance on CNN, there was Casey Hunt who couldn't take it. Hey, look, you can't call that Republican guy a liar. We're all colleagues here. And see, it hits a little too close to home. But the worrisome thing is if we don't do that every time, if we don't call out the lies, if the lies go unaddressed, they become corrosive. And further breeding of distrust in our system occurs. I mean, already a majority have some distrust in government, according to Professor Dan Gonzalez on my Emil Takeout last Friday. He said, it makes it easy for Republicans to do what they're doing because there's a majority in our country who have some degree of distrust. And that's bad for all of us because it could lead, as Gonzalez fears, to people not voting, not just for CFDT 34, but for Joe Biden and for anyone else, people just opting to stay out. The selfish nature of CFDT 34 stains our democracy and emboldens public selfishness as a model. If CFDT 34 is he really like all of us? God help us. But like I said, there's some people, most of them are comedian podcasters who say, yeah, that's the problem. We know Donald Trump is guilty. We'll give him a pass because he's no different from most of the rest of us, which is a sad thing. But the path has already been set. If Donald Trump clears the path, he's the example for everyone else who follows. Look at what that attitude does to any idea of government for the people. Only if it works for me. It leads to partisan fights that never end and where nothing gets done. That's not a good mindset for the future of America. What do? Time for all of us to act like founding fathers and mothers. I know the original folks who founded the Constitution weren't perfect. Some were slaveholders, but the great experiment has lasted more than 250 years. it's still a good model to follow if we care enough to save it. It only continues in the right direction if we all stand up and respect the rule of law. And that means honoring the jury's decision on CFDT 34. CFDT 34, I'm telling you, it's convicted felon Donald Trump. You hear someone spew a lie, just say to yourself, CFDT 34. The jury has spoken. CFDT 34. This is not just one count. It's not just, one minor infraction. It's 34. 34 guilty counts. CFDT 34. I'm telling you. If you have a fear that no one's taking it seriously or no one's paying attention, speak up. CFDT 34. CFDT 34. And like I said, I wasn't riled up until I was just listening to some podcast, a comedian podcast. He tries to be serious, and he did talk about this. He say, look, we all know Donald Trump is guilty. He's guilty. He did what he did. But a lot of them are willing to give him a pass. They don't see it as that bad. And so if the line keeps moving, what's bad? Oh, that's not bad. They keep moving. What's bad? That already you're setting a path for not just Donald Trump, but for future Donald Trumps to do whatever they want with our democracy. And that is not acceptable. That's why the only real answer is to embrace the rule of law, accept the verdicts and say, yeah, all right, let Donald Trump appeal. It'll take years. He probably won't win on appeal, but he has a right to appeal. Accept the rule of law, accept the fact that he is CFDT 34, convicted felon Donald Trump 34. And that should stand up to all the lies we've heard about CFDT 34. They're lies. To say that, oh, he was railroaded, to say it was all political, to say it was a witch hunt, to say it was on and on and on. CFDT 34. The jury has spoken. That's all there is to it. All there is to it. All right, so I'm a little agitated still. And, I'm not even talking, we're not even at the point, or soon I guess we will be. July 11th, the sentencing will happen. And I guess that's about a little more than a month away. Trump continues to talk smack about Judge Juan Merchan. I didn't mention Judge Juan Merchan because his time is coming. His time where he gives, the sentencing. It's coming July 11th. This was the jury's. And let's hope that no one outs the jury, no one docks them. I don't know if there are any Asians in the jury. I don't know what the ethnic makeup was of the jury. But as it should be, anonymous, they did their jobs. We need to protect them because there are a lot of people who worry about the heavy hand of Donald Trump. And we're talking about Republicans and Democrats. So I hope everything goes well there. Judge Merchan will have his day, July 11th. As I said in a previous column, it doesn't look like Donald Trump he could get 20 years per count, something like that. But he'll probably serve time concurrently. They'll limit it to like 4 years, maybe. He'll probably get 4 months, if anything, because it's a nonviolent crime, first offense. Although he's been pretty offensive throughout his life. You got to admit that. He has been pretty offensive throughout his life. However, we'll see what Judge Merchan says. Although, frankly, given Donald Trump's propensity to insult the court, insult the judge, insult the rule of law, I don't know if leniency is really the answer. Leniency for Donald Trump? I don't think so. But we'll see July 11th. We'll see it. No one knows until July 11th happens. But I would not be inclined to be lenient to CFDT34. Okay, so now I saw a movie. I know, well, I saw Perfect Days. A friend said, "Oh, Perfect Days, great, you got to see it." If you're going to see it, let me warn you, not a whole lot happens, but a whole lot happens. And I'm saying this because if you go in expecting what people expect in films, like car crashes and, love affairs and you know what you expect at the movies, oh, I want to see that on the big screen. This is a little screen kind of thing. This is like life. This is like watching life unfold before your eyes. And it's a unique experience because of that, because life is unfolding before your eyes in real time. It's 2 hours of life. And in that sense, it's an interesting cinematic experience that Wim Wenders has given us. And so I went on the internet that looked for all the different articles on this. And I found something on the National Association of Broadcasters website. And it's called "It's Only the Meaning of Life, Wim Wenders and Perfect Days." And it's written by Adrian Pennington. And it's on NAB's, the National Association of Broadcasters, Amplify page. And it really, you got to read some things in preparation for this, because otherwise you're totally like, well, where were the killings? Or where was the murder? Oh, where were the interesting characters? I mean, there was like one guy and a number of people come into his life. Okay. Yeah. But it's not like seeing a multiple character thing. Like I was watching Bloodlines on TV. I don't know if you saw that. Sissy Spacek and Kyle Chandler. Fascinating. But it was almost too much. I was ready for something, dare I say, boring. This is one of those things that dares to be boring in a good way. In a good way. Now here's here's the précis of this story. Wim Wenders talks about his film Perfect Days, which began life as a commission for a promotional documentary about Tokyo's unique public toilets, the Tokyo toilets. Wenders strove to make it a verite drama that is neither quite documentary nor quite fiction, but hopefully offers a truthful encapsulation of its subject. One metaphor Wenders uses is the Japanese concept of komorebi, which conveys the idea of shadow and light, and by extension, an act of ritual for the film's janitor character. And it's about how these flecks of light and shadow from trees, how they are reflected and how they're never the same twice. They're unique. They never happen again, like a lot of things in life. And that's a profound kind of notion that, things don't happen the same way ever. Like I do some performing, acting. I have a script. The script is somewhat memorized, but no two performances are ever alike. They're always unique because I'm different coming to the theater. The audience is different. The performance that day ends up being different. It's all different and unique. And it's all kind of this wondrous way that art is transmitted so that it's still true to the words, true to the vision of me, the artist, and whatever I transmit to you, you get that day, which is different. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but it's always out of that same well. And my God, it's a unique experience. I mean, that's one of the surprising things about live performance. Now, this is a recording, this film Perfect Days. It's a film record. But as you play it back, you come to it in a different way. You experience it in a different way. You see the same thing. This is the beauty of art. So komorebi, a Japanese concept, it reminded me of Anthony Bourdain's use of the term Ichi-e Ichigo, which is this idea of once in a lifetime, never happens again. Bourdain talked about it in terms of having a meal, outdoors, indoors, sushi, noodles, whatever. Having a meal with people you love, you hate, a meal where you commune with people, a special meal with drink, the full, every 9 courses, 3 courses, however many courses, you're just enjoying that moment. And in the end, you say goodbye, and that's a special moment. You know of meals you've had with people, and you say, God, never again. That's a special thing. So Komorebi, which Perfect Days uses, has the same kind of idea that there are unique moments that you have in your life. And somehow this supposedly was started out as a documentary on the public toilets in Tokyo. Became a metaphor for Wim Wenders as he did this film. So here's the article that's in Amplify. The slow, meticulous, and mundane routine of a toilet cleaner in Tokyo is a subject of German auteur. That's the author and the director, his vision. It's a fancified word for artist director, the auteur. I think Andrew Saris, Village Voice, was one of the first to really coin that phrase. Auteur Wim Wenders' latest film, and it has critics waxing lyrical about its transcendental and poetical exploration of life, which I suppose makes it a different kind of artsy film, considering where film has gone in our current day and age. And I'm talking about film as amusement park ride. This is film as transcendental and poetic exploration. A good description here. Perfect Days was nominated for an Oscar for Best International Feature and won Japanese screen icon Koji Yakusho the Best Actor award at Cannes 2023 for his turn as the lead character Hirayama. I see out of the corner of my eyes, director told A-Frame. Films very often tell what's in the center of your vision, and Hirayama is a person who sees a lot more and pays attention to some of the little things we forget to. Sometimes it's not what's in the frame, right? It's off on the edge. Hey, like The Fringe. He sees the homeless man who lives next to one of these toilets he respects, greets, and treats him like everybody else. Hirayama is a person who sees everything that gets lost so often in movies, which is why it's worth seeing, because those things aren't lost in a 2-hour movie where it appears that nothing happens, but everything is happening. And I'm just preparing for you for you to see it if you see it, and don't think just because Emil talked about it, you can't go see it. Because I know a lot of people say, don't spoil it for me. This is not a spoiler. This is to help. So that when you see it and you let it bathe over you, you say, I get it. I get it. I get it on the first take. Sometimes if you go in with a knowledge, it'll spill on you in a way that is different, that you may not have to see it again, but maybe you'll want to see it again. Like I know I want to see it again. Even though it's, at first, I watched maybe half of it. Had to go away. Came back, watched the second half. Read more. Learned more about it. Now I want to see it again. So the Tokyo Toilet Project in 2020 invited contemporary designers and architects to create 17 public bathrooms in Japan's capital. Wenders was initially invited to make a series of promotional documentary shorts about the unique facilities, and that's why you see a lot of unique public toilets here. I mean, there's some really kind of, I mean, public toilets being what they are, some are fairly mundane, fairly proletariat, but these Japanese toilets are really kind of, in a way, special. So Wenders was invited to do these shorts, documentary shorts, but on seeing them himself, he came up with an idea for a fiction feature. So with the co-writer Takuma Takasaki, they wrote a script in 3 weeks. The verite drama was shot in Tokyo over 16 days. That's the reality. You can shoot these kind of films fast and easy. If you're skilled and you know what you're looking for, you don't have to shoot for days. And you can control the ratio of the film shot, and you can shoot in a shooting style that looks like halfway between documentary and narrative filmmaking. I know when I studied film, that was sort of the goal. Documentary, fictional, where is it? But I was no Wim Wenders. The director added an art house touch by shooting in 4:3 ratio, a nod to the legendary Japanese director Yasujiro Ozu, but also a practical choice. It is essential to see the floor, he says, of the toilets. So the 4:3 gives that perspective where you see the entire view of these public toilets. Although it was a fictional story, we had a documentary approach. The camera was always on my director of photography, Franz Lustig's shoulder, never on a tripod, never on tracks, never on a gimbal or a Steadicam or a crane. So you got that bumpy, handheld feeling. This fictional film with a totally fictitious character, Hirayama, was shot like a documentary, Wenders said. To make it feel even more authentic, their approach features mostly handheld camera work and includes a lot of exterior scenes using available light. And you could tell, it wasn't, that kind of glossy, brilliantly lit look. It was available light, a gritty, kind of real life look. The work of Ozu also inspired Wenders' approach, as he describes in a video featurette. There was this heightened attention in Ozu's films that looked at every object as if it only existed once and only there, and he was so attentive to every detail. Well, it's only existing once as we're experiencing it, so yeah. I mean, that's kind of insightful. Since each of the toilet buildings are designed by a different architect, they all have these specific presence. He said, and that is also captivating. It's not as if Hirayama is treating all these toilets as if there were toilets, but he sees them specifically. When you go to these places, you realize the beauty is that they're all so different and that each of them forces you to see the world differently. That is a beautiful thing. So in that way, paying attention to Ozu was ever present. Wenders explained to Masha Dikova at Cine D that he wanted to keep the protagonist's history secret because this story is not about any possible drama he had in the past. It's about here and now and the universal humanity of the character, which you get because it's unfolding now. I say this in my show that I did recently at the Orlando Fringe, that 13.8 billion years of life of the universe has conspired to bring us all together here. Just like if you manage to catch us live on YouTube at Emil Amok 1, there's something that conspired us to be here. Or if you're catching it on tape, it's done as if live. It's a new experience, though, because I'm not live. I'm recorded, but now I'm live, and that's the thing. When you watch the film, it's not live. It's recorded, but there's something about its presence. Generally, routine is considered something boring that you do automatically without really being present. To Hirayama, routine means beautiful processes you love doing and that give your life shape. And we're talking about the art of cleaning toilets. Now, I wondered about this because I cleaned toilets in college, and I've said some disparaging things about how can it be that I go to a college and I'm cleaning toilets? But there's something that is special about this guy cleaning toilets in his blue jumpsuit and approaching it with a precision and approaching it with an importance. He has an importance in society. To clean these public restrooms, everyone has to go, and he's there to make sure you can go. It's important. It's not a menial task. In fact, Wenders said on an interview that it's a mythical job. You see him cleaning toilets, and so you easily reduce his job to being a toilet cleaner, but slowly you realize the richness of his life, and you realize that cleaning a toilet is a strangely metaphoric job, and it is. You are cleaning what people express away, and you allow them to express again. Without you, they're peeing on themselves. They need you to make things right, to say, welcome. The function, the biologic function can continue. I have cleaned. The other thing about this movie, it's very visually metaphorical. It's beautiful. Wenders uses the Japanese concept of komorebi. It describes the dancing shadow patterns created by sunlight shining through rustling leaves and swaying branches. It's mesmerizing. It's beautiful. It's really hallucinogenic, really. Every day during his simple lunch in the park, Hirayama takes pictures of a particular tree with an old Olympus film camera. Black and white pictures might seem the same to an inattentive viewer, yet, of course, they are all unique. The whole concept behind komorebi is that it can exist only for a moment. So this original passionate hobby is possibly the most suitable visual symbol for the main character's attitude about life. You capture it, you look at it, and it really is gone. You've lived it. You were there. And by capturing it, it's gone. So, in another interview, Wenders said komorebi was a way of honoring the light and the trees because, it's this dappled, shadowy effect. Wenders says Hirayama's light photography became an act of saying thank you to the light. And the simpler his life got, the happier he was. He became a monk without knowing it, which is really the value of a kind of the meditativeness of this movie. I like that Wenders says he became a monk without knowing it. I don't think in his own thinking he was living the life of a monk. He was just living the life he started to like. It was simple. It was enjoyable. It was spiritual. It was inside. It wasn't about the outside forces. It wasn't about getting things. In fact, he led a very minimal life. But Wenders says he doesn't like to feel manipulated in the cinema and struck upon the ideal way to make the sort of film he likes in Perfect Days. This is how he explained it. I hate it when I see a movie and in everything that happens, I see this is constructed, or I'm reminded of something 10 minutes later that will have consequences. I hate it when story becomes so obvious that it's a construction. I'll tell you, nothing was obvious here. The fact that it happened, you say, oh, something's happening. And that something was a magical moment. It was something that happened to the character. And Hirayama, the toilet cleaner, reveled in it. And so there's something about creating this documentary of a fiction, finding that one of the ways to do this was to film without blocking or rehearsing. And it does have that kind of like, here we are kind of effect. This is interesting. He says, we basically gave up rehearsing after a while. Our documentary approach is a little risky for actors. A lot of actors don't feel secure if they cannot rehearse and know exactly what they're supposed to do. I mean, I'll say, if you're going out there and you're not really true or you're not really set on what you're going to do, it can impact everything. Another take, it might cost more money. You got to really be reliant on actors you trust if you're the director. But I prefer this way. I prefer this way of rehearsing. Let's see what happens. You're the uncle of this little girl who's run away, and you're trying to help her find herself. And she's looking at you as a model. Wender says, in my fictional films, I'm always so happy if I manage just in one shot here or there that captures something that is utterly real and only happens at the moment. That's important. Only happens at the moment. I'm ready for a documentary moment to appear in science fiction. On the other hand, in my documentary films, I'm often trying to bring in a little element of fiction because I think that's how we live. We live in reaction to things that actually happen around us, and we live as a reaction to things we imagine. Wender says, the stories that happen are very different categories than the stories we impose, let's say, on an actress in a movie. So Perfect Days became a wonderful melange of documentary and fiction. And so things happen, and they don't seem to make sense, but they do. And then there's the idea of the music they have. From Hirayama has these tapes. He collects these tapes, American songs, mostly rock and roll. Eric Burden and the Animals, House of the Rising Sun, a key song. Dock of the Bay, Otis Redding. Wender says, I thought I was making a music documentary when I was filming a real-life miracle. A real-life miracle. I know how in fiction and documentary things cross each other, and you can never really define what it is, and that's the beauty of it. In Perfect Days, I didn't have to make that effort. It just happened that the routine of that man and his daily work and his going to work in the morning and driving a car and listening to music and coming home and taking a bath in the public bath and going to bed and reading. Does that sound boring? It's not boring. It's kind of, as it unfolds, you're living his life, and it's a kind of a beautiful real-time experience. I always had to make an effort in fiction to make it feel like documentary, and in documentaries to make them feel like fiction. But here it suddenly happened just on its own. Maybe we had created the conditions that enable fiction and documentary to go so well together. Yakusho's performance is largely silent, but he's given a soundtrack to his mind. Often the film finds him driving the streets of Tokyo, listening to the Velvet Underground, the Rolling Stones, Nina Simone, a soundtrack of Wender's own favorite music from the 70s and 80s. The songs are very much part of the storytelling process, Wender said, to the point that we put them into the script when we wrote it. For instance, the lyrics to Nina Simone's Feeling Good were on the first page of the script. They were not even intended to be used in the film. For me, they described how I imagined this character, his philosophy, and his way of living. They were my prologue. It was only in the end that I realized they were the best way to end this film. And so I don't think I could spoil Perfect Days, which may be the perfect film. If you're looking for meaning in your life, meaning in film, meaning in storytelling, the idea of things unfolding in the now, there's a line in the film that is especially meaningful that goes, how does it go? It goes, I gotta find it. Next time is next time, now is now. Next time is next time now. And you know those now moments. You know those now moments instinctively when they happen. You say, darn it, there's a now moment. It's never going to happen again. I mean, there it is. Next time is next time, now is now. Now you got to do it now. Or at least honor now and say, this is never going to happen again. Never. It's never going to happen again. It's a now moment. And you know, to bring it back to the other story we've been talking about, the Donald Trump, the convicted felon Donald Trump, CFDT34, you know, when you listen to those verdicts, and because of the way it was reported, I mean, we weren't watching cameras on the court. The best thing was when I heard my friend Lawrence O'Donnell read the 34 guilties, and it was guilty, 34 times. You could do that on your own by reading the transcript. But the transcript, the 34 guilties, that is a once-in-a-lifetime moment for people who were in the courtroom. That was like, save democracy once, save democracy again, save democracy, save democracy, save democracy, 34 times. That's powerful. Guilty. Guilty. Save democracy. Save democracy. That's why I just make it into an acronym. CFDT34. Convicted felon Donald Trump 34. Don't forget it. People try to lie about it. Just say it. Convicted felon Donald Trump 34. Respect and honor the jury. Respect and honor the rule of law. See my column on the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog. I mean, that we're still in that post-mortem period. You know, Donald Trump is lying and saying stuff and raising money, saying, oh, the Supreme Court should get in on that. No, that the Supreme Court, not yet. That they can't yet. It's a state court. You know, it's a state court case. New York takes it first. Ultimately, it could go to the Supreme Court, but not before all these other appeals. In the meantime, if Donald Trump doesn't shut up, he's lucky if Judge Juan Merchan doesn't throw him into jail, which he can and should, but I don't know if he will. It's up to Judge Merchan. And we'll talk about him the closer we get to July 11th. But you know that, I mean, if you heard the verdicts read as they were reported on Thursday, you know it was history. And a lot of people like to say, hey, you know where you were, right? Big stories, you know where you were. I was right here trying to figure out how do I explain this to people? All these guilties, you know, I wasn't in the courtroom, and because cameras weren't, and audio wasn't, all you have is the transcript, which is like reading Hamlet the play instead of watching Olivier. I'd rather watch Olivier. But, you know, every time the word guilty was said, it was a reminder. Save democracy. Save our democracy. Okay, that's going to do it for our show today. Hope you enjoyed it. I would see perfect days. Don't expect Jack Reacher. Hirayama is not Jack Reacher. No one gets beat up. Although sometimes you'd want to beat someone up in the film. And there's some weirdos. You say, well, what is this? But really, I won't say Perfect Days is a perfect film. But if you're wondering about your life and you're wondering about if things add up, if you've lived Really, it's a spiritual life. I think there's one moment where the guy goes into a temple, but it's not religious. It's not really. And as Wim Wenders says, Hirayama acts as a monk without knowing he's a monk. It's a spiritual film. And I always believe the best spiritual guys are the guys who don't shove religion down your throat and say, hey, it's this. And, they use the G word. It's not about that. It is about a spiritual path. It's about knowing inside that you're not engaged in the struggle. You're not engaged in striving, which leads to suffering. You are embracing the life that comes in front of you, and that is so beautiful. It just is. Okay. Read the column, ALDEF blog, Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, ALDEF, AALDEF.org/blog. Back again, maybe tomorrow, maybe we'll play a repeat, maybe we'll do something else. We always like to end with a little meditation. Loving kindness. Love makes the world go round. I mean, it does. I mean, it's not trite, it's just true. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Maha.